Scary Stories Marathon. Welcome, welcome. Are you ready for some scary stories? If so, then you've come to the right place. Tonight, we will be telling you progressively scarier and scarier stories. Do you think you're ready? Well, to help you out tonight, we have devised a pumpkin scale. So the more pumpkins that a story has, the scarier it will be. Now, one pumpkin stories are not so scary. They are definitely more fun than scary. These are for our youngest listeners. Two pumpkin stories, well, they're a little bit scary. They're still a little fun, but there's more suspense. Three pumpkin stories are just plain scary. Yes, these will give you shivers. Whew. All right, four pumpkin stories. Well, they're more than scary, and they might give you teeny tiny nightmares. Just teeny tiny ones. And lastly, 5 pumpkin stories. They will definitely give you nightmares, so beware. So, do you think you can last the whole night? Can you listen to all stories going all the way up to 5 pumpkins? Well, let us see, shall we? All right, good luck. Let us begin with
This is the story of Mouse's first Halloween. Lauren Thompson is the author and Phuket Erdogan is the illustrator. One spooky night, when the moon was bright, Mouse crept around, and this is what he found. High in the sky, Mouse saw something flying. Flit, flit, flit. Eek! Mouse squeaked. What could it be? What do you think it might be? Let's find out. Swooping bats, that's all. Not so scary after all. Down on the ground, Mouse heard something moving. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Eek! Mouse squeaked. What could it be? Tumbling leaves, that's all. Not so scary after all. Up on a pole, Mouse saw something flapping. Flip, flip, flip. Eek! Mouse squeaked. What could it be? A waving scarecrow, that's all. Not so scary after all. Under a branch, Mouse heard something dropping. Plop, plop, plop. Eek! Mouse squeaked. What could it be? Falling apples, that's all. Not so scary after all. Over near the wall, Mouse saw something sneaking. Creep, creep, creep. Eek! Mouse squeaked. What could it be? Scampering kittens, that's all. Not so scary after all. Deep in the shadows, Mouse saw something flickering. Grin, grin, grin. Eek! Mouse squeaked. What could it be? A glowing jack-o'-lantern. That's all. Not so scary after all. Then, on the step, Mouse heard something knocking. Thump, 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 thump. Eek! Mouse squeaked. What, oh what could it be? Trick-or-treaters! Hooray! And they sang, trick or treat, giggle and fright, it's fun to be scared on Halloween night. The end. That is the story of Mouse's first Halloween. Not so scary after all. Witches, ghosts, and goblins stealing down the street. Knock on every doorway, trick or treat. When your door is opened, here is what you'll meet. Scary creatures shouting, trick or treat.
Hello everybody. Welcome to a scary-ish story that me, Miss Becky, and my friend Spike are going to share with you today. It's called Duck, Duck, Dinosaur and the Noise at Night. Ooh. It's by Callie George, and the pictures are by Oriole the doll. Let's see. Oh yeah, here we go, Spike. Duck, Duck, Dinosaur and the Noise at Night. Look, there's another Spike right there. All right. Mama Duck's family was growing up fast. Flap was getting big, Feather was getting big, and Spike was getting bigger. They were too big to sleep with Mama Duck anymore. It was time for them to sleep all by themselves in their very own nest. They were excited and only a little scared. "We are ready," said Feather. "We can do it." Yeah. Feather, Flap, and Spike shared a story, just like we're doing. Then they shared a snuggle. Aww. And then they fell asleep. They all woke up at once. "I heard a noise, a scary noise," they said. "I heard it too," said Feather. "But what can we do? We can't just hide." "Hide!" And Spike hid. Oh, Spike ran away. Oh my goodness. Come back, Spike. So Feather and Flap hid with Spike. They shared a story, like we're doing. They shared a snuggle. And they sang a little song. Then, at last, they fell asleep. Oh no. There's that sound again, kids. What is that sound? They all woke up at once. "I heard that noise, that scary noise," said Flap. "I heard it too," said Feather. "Hiding didn't work, but what else can we do? We can't just run away." "Oh, run away," said Spike. And he did. Spike ran away, so Feather and Flap ran away too. They had to stay with him. They ran and ran all the way around the pond. They were too tired to take another step. They shared a story. They shared a snuggle. They sang a song. And they counted the the stars. Ooh. And then, at last, again, they fell asleep. Then they all woke up at once. I heard that noise. That's a scary noise, said Flap. I heard it too, said Feather, trembling. Hiding didn't work. Running away didn't work. There's nothing we can do. It was late, and they were so scared. Feather's knees knocked, Flap's wings flapped, and Spike's teeth chattered. Oh, everyone was being so what? Noisy! Oh, wow. That's it! We can be really noisy, said Feather. We can scare the scary noise. All right, kids, it's your turn to help. Let's get super noisy! Boom, 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 bang, 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 crush, 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 crush. But Spike made only one sound. It was Spike. Flap laughed and Feather laughed. They would tell Spike in the morning. But right now, Feather and Flap did not share a story or a snuggle or sing a song or count the stars. They didn't need to. They fell fast asleep. And they all slept in their very own nest all night long. The end. He's sleeping. Should we wake him up? I'll just give him a snuggle. Happy Halloween, kids.
Creepy Pair of Underwear. Written by Aaron Reynolds and the pictures by Peter Brown. Jasper Rabbit needed new underwear. On Thursday, Mom took him to the underwear store and grabbed the last 3 packages of plain white. But as they headed for the checkout, Jasper spotted them. Creepy underwear, so creepy, so comfy. They were glorious. Mom, can we get these? Jasper pleaded. I think they're a little too creepy, said Mom. They're not creepy, they're cool, said Jasper. I'm not a little bunny anymore. I'm a big rabbit now. Mom agreed to buy 1 pair. That night, Jasper wore his cool new underwear to bed. Do you want me to leave the hallway light on? Asked Dad. Dad, I'm not a little bunny anymore, said Jasper. I'm a big rabbit now. His dad shut the door, and that's when Jasper noticed. Dun, 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 dun. The underwear glowed. A ghoulish, greenish glow. He closed his eyes. He pulled up the covers. He buried his face in his pillow. But it didn't help. He could still see their ghoulish, greenish glow. Jasper leaped out of bed and put on a pair of plain white. He stuffed the creepy underwear into the bottom of his laundry hamper. He finally fell asleep. But when he got up the next day, he was wearing the creepy underwear. Jasper threw them into the garbage can. He was still a big rabbit. He wasn't scared or anything, but he was done with scary underwear. After school, Jasper was doing his homework when he heard it. A scratchy, scraping sound coming from the dresser. He opened the dresser and they were back, staring at him with that ghoulish, greenish glow. He snatched the creepy underwear out of the drawer. He grabbed a big envelope and some stamps. To China. Bye-bye, scary underwear, he said, dropping the package into the mailbox. When he opened the front door the next morning, they were there. Oh my! And were those chopsticks? His creepy pair of underwear had somehow returned from China, and it had brought back souvenirs. Jasper grabbed his mom's good sewing scissors. She didn't like him using them, but this was an underwear emergency. This time, the creepy underwear were gone for good. At bedtime, he slowly opened his underwear drawer. Nothing. Just plain white undies. He searched under his bed. He shook out his lampshades. Whew! There was no sign of creepy underwear. He went into the bathroom to comb his ears. They were back! What's the matter with you? His mom asked. You're so jittery lately. Nothing, he yelped. A grown rabbit couldn't be terrified of his underpants. He seized the underwear. He snatched a shovel from the garage and he rode. He didn't stop pedaling until he reached Creekhanger Hill. Jasper began to dig. He dug until his hole was dark and deep and 100% underwear proof. He dropped the underwear in. They gleamed from the bottom, that ghoulish, greenish glow. But not for long. When he got home, Jasper crept up to his dresser. They couldn't be in there. There was no way, right? He reached for the handle. He peeked in. Nothing. Just plain white. Jasper smiled and turned out the light. There was just one problem. It was really dark in there, even for a big rabbit. Jasper turned on the light. He looked at his non-glowy pair of plain white, and he knew what he had to do. The creepy underwear were a little muddy, but they still filled the room with that gentle, greenish glow. The next day, Jasper gathered his allowance money and went to the underwear store all by himself, just like a big rabbit. That night, Jasper wasn't scared at all. As he lay down to sleep, he smiled. And so did his underwear, because they had finally found somebody who wasn't scared of creepy underwear. The end.
And now for our next scary story, the story of the three robbers. Do-do-do-dum, do-dum, do-dum, do-do-do-do-dum, do-dum, do-dum. The three robbers. Once upon a time, there were three fierce robbers, and they went about hidden under large black capes and tall black hats. Do-do-do-dum, do-dum, do-dum, do-do-do-do-dum, do-dum, do-dum. The first one had a blunderbuss. Boom! The second one had a pepper blower. And the third one had a huge red axe. Chop, 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 chop. In the dark of night, they walk the roads, searching for victims. Do-do-do-dum, do-dum, do-dum, do-do-do-do-dum, do-dum, do-dum. They terrified everyone. Women fainted. Ah! Brave men ran. Ah! And dogs fled. Woo, 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 woo. To stop carriages, the robbers blew pepper in the horses' eyes. And with the axe, they smashed the carriage wheels. Chop, 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 chop. And with the blunderbuss, boom! They threatened the passengers and plundered them. The robbers' hideout was a cave high up in the mountains, and there they carried their loot. Do-do-do-dum, do-dum, do-dum, do-do-do-do-dum, do-dum, do-dum. They had trunks and chests full of gold, jewels, money, watches, wedding rings, and precious stones. But one bitter black night, the robbers stopped a carriage that had but one passenger, an orphan named Tiffany. She was on her way to live with a wicked aunt, and Tiffany was delighted to meet the three robbers. And since there was no treasure but Tiffany, the thieves bundled her in a warm cape and carried her away. Do-do-do-dum, do-dum, do-dum, do-do-do-do-dum, do-dum, do-dum. They made up a soft bed for her in a corner of the cave, and there she slept. Well, the next morning she awoke to find herself surrounded by trunks of glittering riches. What is this all for? She asked. The robbers choked and sputtered. They had never thought of spending their wealth. They set off and gathered up all the lost, unhappy, and abandoned children they could find. And they bought a beautiful castle where all of them could live. Dressed in red caps and red capes, the children moved into their new home. Stories of the castle spread throughout the land. New children came or were brought each day to the doorstep of the three robbers. The children grew until they were old enough to marry, and then they built houses all around the castle, and the village grew up full of people dressed in red caps and red capes, and these people built 3 high roof towers, one for each of the 3 robbers. Do 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 do. And that was the story of the three robbers.
The tale, called Strangers, is told across America and Britain in many different settings. The setting for this version is a train. Strangers. A man and a woman happened to be traveling on the same train. The woman took out a book and began reading. The train continued on for at least a half dozen stations, and she never looked up. The man watched her for a while, then asked, "Excuse me, what are you reading?" "A ghost story," she said. "It's very good. Very spooky." "Do you believe in ghosts?" he asked. "Oh, yes," she replied. "Ghosts are everywhere." "I don't believe in ghosts," he said. "In all my born days, I have never seen a ghost. Not one." "Haven't you?" she asked, and vanished.
I'm Miss Kristen, and this story is called Red Lips. It's about a girl named Janisha who had lived in the city all of her life, but the year she started middle school, her family moved from the city to the country, a big old house at the end of a long, lonely country lane. At first, Janisha didn't want to move until she found out she would be getting her very own room. She wouldn't have to share with her little sister. Her new room was in the attic of the house. You had to go up a long, dark stairway and down a long, dark hallway to get to her bedroom. But once you were there, the room itself was beautiful. You could hardly tell it had ever been the attic. It was big, the window was huge, the walls were her favorite color, freshly painted, and it had its very own bathroom. The day she moved in with her family, Janisha worked very hard. She unpacked all her things, arranged her bedroom furniture, put her posters up on the wall, put her books on her bookshelf. She was asleep that night almost before her head even hit the pillow. But around about midnight, she woke up. She heard something at that big window. She heard scratch, scratch, scratch. Thought Janisha, it must be a tree branch or something all the way up here on the third floor. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She got up, she looked out the window, and there she saw a hideous face pressed against the glass. It was a woman with pale, pale skin, long dark hair, red lips, and long red fingernails. And she said, "Little girl, do you know what I do with these red lips and these long red fingernails?" "No," shouted Janisha. She pulled down the window shade, jumped into bed, pulled the covers up over her head, and shivered and shook until finally, hours later, she fell asleep. When she woke up the next morning, the sun was shining so brightly, she figured she just had a nightmare. First night jitters in a new house. She didn't even tell her family. But that night, she wasn't in any hurry to go to bed. Finally, her mom said, "Janisha, your little sister has been in bed for an hour. You need to go to sleep too, so you can be ready for school tomorrow." And Janisha went up to bed. She climbed the long, dark stairway, and the steps went creak, creak, creak. She went down the long, dark hallway, and the floorboards went creak, 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 creak. She opened up her bedroom door. Creak. She looked all around, but nothing seemed out of place. So she changed into her jammies, brushed her teeth, and got into bed. It took her a while to fall asleep, but she did fall asleep. Until around about midnight, she heard something. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Something was at the window. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Janisha got up. She went over to the window, and when she looked out, she saw a hideous face pressed against the glass. A woman with pale white skin, long black hair, red lips, and long red fingernails. And the woman said, "Little girl, do you know what I do with these red lips and these long red fingernails?" "No!" shouted Janisha. She pulled down the shade, jumped into bed, pulled the covers up over her head, and shivered and shook all night. She didn't go to sleep at all, and the next morning the first thing she did was tell her mother what happened. Her mom said, "Janisha, you had a nightmare, and I'm not surprised. Do you remember what you had for dessert last night? You had ice cream and dill pickles. That would give anyone nightmares." Janisha almost agreed, but not quite. And that night, she did everything she could think of to put off going to bed. She did her homework, she did the dishes, she took out the garbage, until her mother said, "Janisha, your sister has been in bed for 2 hours. You need to go to sleep too, or you won't be ready for school tomorrow morning." Janisha reluctantly went up to bed. She climbed up the long, dark stairway. Creak, creak, creak. It had never seemed so long or dark before. Creak, creak, creak. She walked down the long, dark hallway. Creak, creak, creak. It had never seemed so long or so dark before. Creak, creak, creak. She opened up her bedroom door. Creak. She stood in the hall and she looked and looked and looked, but nothing seemed out of place. So, in all of 5 seconds, she ran in, pulled on her jammies, and jumped into bed, pulling the covers up over her head. And she shivered, and she shook, and she did not fall asleep at all, until at midnight she heard scratch, scratch, scratch on the window. Scratch, scratch, scratch. "I'm not going to look, I'm not going to look," she told herself. Scratch, scratch, scratch. "Oh no, I have to look." Summoning all of her courage, Janisha threw off the covers, got out of bed, and walked over to the window, where she saw a hideous face pressed against the glass. A woman with pale white skin, long dark hair, red lips, and long red fingernails. And the woman said, "Little girl, do you know what I do with these red lips and these long red fingernails?" "No," said Janisha, "no." "Well, tonight, little girl, I am going to show you." And the woman with the pale white skin, the long black hair, red lips, and long red fingernails took one long red fingernail and did this. And that was the end.
There Was an Old Woman All Skin and Bone is a traditional story told through song, and I'd like your help singing the story. At the end of each line, we hear the wind moaning in the trees. Ooh. Can you do that? Ooh. And again. Ooh. I'd also like your help being those trees in the graveyard. Stand up nice and tall with your legs together like a trunk, and put your arms like the gnarled branches of the tree. There was an old woman all skin and bone. Ooh. She lived down by the old graveyard. Ooh. One night she thought she'd take a walk. Ooh. She walked down by the old graveyard. Ooh. She saw the bones a-lying around. Ooh. She went to the cupboard to get a broom. Ooh. She opened the cupboard and boo!
And Old Man was out for a walk. When a storm came up, he looked for a place to take shelter. Soon he came to an old house. He ran up on the porch and knocked on the door. Nobody answered. By now, rain was pouring down, thunder was booming, and lightning was flashing. So he tried the door. When he found it was unlocked, he went inside.
Except for a pile of wooden boxes, the house was empty. He broke up some of the boxes and made a fire with them. Then he sat down in front of the fire and dried himself. It was so warm and cozy that he soon fell asleep. But when he woke up, a black cat was sitting next to the fire. It stared at him for a while, and then it started purring. That's a nice cat, he thought, and he dozed off again. When he opened his eyes, there was a second cat in the room, but this one was as big as a wolf. It looked at him very closely, and it asked,
"Shall we do it now?"
No. Let's wait till Martin comes.
I must be dreaming, thought the old man. He closed his eyes again. Then he took another look, and there was a third cat in the room, and this one was as big as a tiger. It looked at the old man, it looked him over, and it said,
Shall we do it now?
No. Let's wait till Martin comes.
The old man jumped up and jumped out of the window and started running and yelling over his shoulder. When Martin comes, you tell him I couldn't wait.
This is the story called A Walk Too Far by Gloria Whelan, and it's in the book Half-Minute Horrors. A Walk Too Far. I had walked too far, ending up in a neighborhood of homes with that deserted look. The streetlights came on, and I hurried from one pale pool of light to the next, searching for something familiar. At last, admitting I was lost, I approached a house where the flick of a curtain suggested it was occupied. Hoping for directions, I knocked at the door. The man who answered my knock appeared strangely pleased to see me, as though he had been waiting for me or someone just like me to appear. He ushered me into a darkened room.
So, then, no one knows you are here, right?
The man said, and I heard a key turn in the lock.
I'm Miss Kristen, and this is a story that has haunted me for more than 30 years. The story is The Green Ribbon, and it's from the book In a Dark, Dark Room and Other Scary Stories. Once there was a girl named Jenny. She was like all the other girls except for one thing. She always wore a green ribbon around her neck. There was a boy named Alfred in her class. Alfred liked Jenny, and Jenny liked Alfred. One day he asked her, "Why do you wear that ribbon all the time?" "I cannot tell you," said Jenny. But Alfred always asked, "Why do you wear it?" And Jenny would say, "It's not important." Jenny and Alfred grew up and fell in love. One day they got married. After their wedding, Alfred said, "Now that we are married, you must tell me about the green ribbon." "You still must wait," said Jenny. "I will tell you when the right time comes." Years passed. Alfred and Jenny grew old. One day, Jenny became very sick. The doctor told her that she was dying. Jenny called Alfred to her side. "Alfred," she said, "now I can tell you about the green ribbon. Untie it, and you will see why I could not tell you before." Slowly and carefully, Alfred untied the ribbon, and Jenny's head fell off. That's the end. Don't be fooled because it's in the easy reader section. This is one of the scariest stories I know.
Did you know that a long time ago, I lived in Tennessee? I lived right up next to the mountains. And that's why I wanted to tell you this story. It happened a long, long time ago in those mountains. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget the facts. It happened to an old mountain man. The old man lived in a log cabin with just his hound dogs for company. 3 of them, good dogs. The cabin only had one room. That's where he ate, and where he slept, and where he just sat. The cabin had a porch, and that's where the dogs lived. They lived under the porch. Aroo, aroo, aroo. Good dogs. The man and his dogs liked it up there in the mountains, but they were poor as dirt. If they wanted to eat, they had to hunt. And if they didn't get anything, they went hungry. You know what made them hungrier? Cold, windy, dark nights like tonight. Like the night I'm telling you about, too. The man and his dogs had been hunting up and down the mountain from sunup until just before dark. But they'd only got one scrawny rabbit. The man looked at that rabbit. Measly rabbit. Bits of fur missing, one lop ear. He looked at the dark closing in around him there in the woods, felt the cold on his neck, turned his collar up. "Here, dogs," he said, "let's go home." And the dogs followed him back to the cabin. Aroo, 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 good dogs. When they got home, the old man cleaned the rabbit and he roasted it on a spit in the fireplace. He ate the meat, a piddly little bit, and he threw the bones to the dogs under the porch. And he sat down in front of the fire, still feeling so hungry that he wished he could eat the smell of that roasting rabbit that still hung in the air. Even so, he started to doze off. Just before his eyes closed, he heard a noise over by the wall. He looked, and through a crack between the logs, a critter squeezed and wiggled its way inside. A weird critter the size of a cat, but more like a weasel, hairy with scrabbling claws and a tail like this. Well, the man snatched up his hatchet and went after that critter, and whack! He whacked off that critter's tail. The critter scared back through the crack in the wall. The man picked up the tail, and he said, "Looks like supper ain't over yet." He roasted that tail. He ate the meat. He threw the tail bones to the dogs under the porch. And he rubbed his full belly, and he went to bed, feeling happy and content. But in the middle of the night, the wind came whistling around the cabin. And woke him. Something else, too. The old man pulled his quilt up to his whiskery chin and listened. Did you hear that scratching? Outside on the wall. Then he heard a voice. "Taily-po! Taily-po! All I want is my taily-po." The hair stood up on the man's head. He jumped out of bed, threw open the door, and called, "Here, dogs! Here, here, here!" And the dogs came from under the porch. "Aroo, aroo, aroo!" He listened as the hounds chased that critter off into the woods. And he waited. Before long, the dogs came back. "Aroo, aroo!" With just two of them. The other was still chasing the critter, the man thought. "Good dogs," he said, and he closed the door and he went back to bed and fell asleep. Until... Did you hear that? The man did. He pulled the quilt up to his ears and listened. Just below the window. Then that voice came. "Taily-po, taily-po, I'm coming to get my taily-po." The man stumbled to the door. "Here, dogs," he called. "Here, here, here." And two dogs tore out from under the porch. "Aroo, aroo." The man listened as they took off after that critter, chasing it deep into the woods, and he waited. Before long, one dog came back. Just one. "Aroo!" "Good dog," the man said, peering uneasily into the dark. Then he shut the door, crawled back into bed, and fell into a fitful sleep. Did you hear that? So did the man. He sat bolt upright and listened. At the door. And then the voice. "You know, and I know, that all I want is my taily-po." Oh, the man shook so hard he couldn't stand. So he called from the bed, "Here, dog, here, here, here." And the last dog came from under the porch. "Aroo!" The The man listened to the dog chasing that critter far, far off into the woods, and he waited. But the dog didn't come back. The man pulled the quilt right up over his head and finally fell back to sleep. Have you ever felt like someone's watching you? So have I. Well, just before morning, the old man's eyes popped open under that quilt because he felt eyes watching him. Then he heard it. Then he felt something climbing up on the bed. He couldn't stand it. He had to look. He threw the quilt back and saw the critter with its pointy ears and its scratching claws staring at him with glowing red eyes. What? What do you want? The man croaked. The critter crept closer and closer until it crouched right next to him. And then it said, "You know, and I know, that I'm here to get my Taily Po." "I haven't got your Taily Po," the man cried. "You have," the critter said. "You have!" And it jumped on the man and scratched everything to pieces. There's nothing left of the old man's house except the chimney. Anyway, that's what I heard.
The story you just heard is a retelling of the Appalachian folk tale, The Taily Po. If you'd like to read another version of the story, look for The Taily Po, a ghost story, told by Joanna Galdone, illustrated by Paul Galdone.
Donald and Sarah went to the movies. Then they went for a car ride in Donald's car. They parked up on a hill, and at the edge of town, they were able to see the lights all throughout the valley. Donald turned on the radio.
Breaking news. A murderer has escaped from the state prison. He was armed with a knife and was headed south on foot. His left hand is missing. In its place, he wears a hook.
"Let's roll up the windows and lock the doors," said Sarah. "That's a good idea," said Donald. "That prison isn't very far away. Maybe we really should go home," said Sarah. "But it's only 10 o'clock, said Donald. "I don't care what time it is. I want to go home," said Sarah. "Look, Sarah, he's not going to climb all the way up here. Why would he do that? Even if he did, all the doors are locked. How would he get in?" asked Donald. "I'm scared and I want to go home. He could take that hook and break through the door and break through the window and get in." Donald was annoyed. Girls are always afraid of something. As he started the car, Sarah thought she heard someone or something scratching at her door. "Did you hear that?" she asked as they roared away. "It sounded like someone or something was trying to get in." "Don't be silly," said Donald. Soon they got to her house. "Would you like to come in and have some cocoa?" Sarah asked. "No, I've got to get home," said Donald. He went around the car to the other side of the door to let her out, hanging on the door handle was a hook.
Sadly, we have come to the end of our scary story marathon. Did we scare you? Well, I hope so, if only just a little bit. Did you have any favorite scary stories that we told tonight? If so, please let us know. Also, did we not tell one of your favorite scary stories? Please let us know that too. And maybe on our second scary story marathon, we'll tell that one. Thank you so much for listening to our scary stories tonight. If you'd like more scary stories, the library has a lot of scary stories. Please drop in and we can show you where they're at, or you can give us a call and we'll pull some books for you for curbside service. Well, goodbye and good night. Stay